My name is Clara, and I am 34 years old. For a whole decade, I believed my marriage was a beautiful dream that would never end. But I have learned that even the brightest dreams can turn into cold shadows when the person you love becomes a stranger. My husband, Robert, was once my anchor and my best friend. We built our life together on a foundation of trust and shared laughter. Our young son, Leo, was the light that kept our home warm. Back then, I never imagined that silence could be so loud. But lately, the atmosphere in our house has changed. The sunlight that used to fill our rooms now feels weak and cold. Robert has become a shadow, living under the same roof, but drifting further away from me with every passing day. We share a bed, but we no longer share our lives. It started with small excuses, late nights at the office and sudden business trips. Then came the guarded glances and the secret phone calls. He's physically present at the dinner table, but his mind is somewhere else, trapped in a world where I'm no longer invited. Robert now guards his phone as if it contains a dangerous secret. Whenever I walk into the room, he quickly turns the screen away or puts it face down. The man who once shared his deepest thoughts with me now shares nothing but cold, empty excuses. "You're just imagining things, Clara," he tells me with a hollow, forced smile. But I can see the truth in his eyes, or rather, the lack of it. His gaze never meets mine anymore, and the honest connection that held us together for 10 years is slowly vanishing into thin air. One rainy afternoon, little Leo sat on the floor with his toys and looked up at me.
Mummy, why doesn't Daddy want to play with me anymore?
His innocent question felt like a sharp knife twisting in my chest. I knelt down and pulled him into a tight hug, trying to hide the tears in my eyes. "No, my love, you are perfect," I whispered. "Daddy is just very busy with work right now." It was the heaviest lie I ever had to tell, and it hurt more than the truth. I decided I couldn't live in this silence any longer. I had to fight for what was left of our marriage. I sent Leo to stay with his aunt for the weekend, hoping that a quiet night together would help Robert and me find the path back to each other. I spent the entire afternoon preparing for his arrival. I cooked a grand dinner, the same roasted chicken with lemon and garlic he loved on our wedding night. I lit scented candles and wore the elegant silk dress he had bought for me years ago. When Robert finally walked through the door, he didn't notice the flickering candles or the delicious aroma of the food. He didn't even look at me. He walked straight past the dining table and headed to his office, his eyes fixed on his phone as always. I stood alone in the kitchen, watching the steam rise from the cold plates. The silence was deafening, and the weight of being invisible in my own home became too much to bear. I realized that night that I was fighting for a man who had already left. Late that night, after the house had fallen into a restless sleep, Robert's phone buzzed on the nightstand. I usually respected his privacy, but the pain and suspicion had made me desperate. My hands trembled as I reached out to touch the glowing screen.
The message was from a name I didn't recognize, but the words were crystal clear. "I miss you already. Are you thinking about me today?" In that single second, my heart shattered into a million pieces, and the world I knew turned into ashes.
I didn't scream and I didn't wake him up.
I just stood there in the cold moonlight as I stared at the man who had been my world. He slept peacefully while I drowned in a heartbreak that only I knew existed. The betrayal was finally out in the light. The next morning, the house felt different. It felt like the end. I didn't make the usual tea and I didn't greet him with a smile. Instead, I placed his phone right in the center of the breakfast table and waited in silence for him to face the truth. When Robert walked into the kitchen, his eyes immediately fell on the glowing device. He froze for a moment, his face turning a pale shade of gray. He looked at me, then at the phone, and I could see him searching for another lie to tell me. "Clara, please, it's not what you think it is," he stammered, his voice weak and trembling. But the time for excuses had long passed. I looked him straight in the eyes and saw the cowardice that had replaced the man I once loved. "Then tell me, Robert, what am I supposed to think?" I asked, my voice surprisingly calm. "Am I supposed to ignore the messages? Am I supposed to forget how you made me feel invisible in my own home for the past 6 months?" He looked away, unable to meet my gaze. "I was stressed, Clara. Work was heavy, and I just needed someone to talk to." He trailed off, realizing how pathetic his words sounded. He had traded 10 years of loyalty for a few moments of secret talk. "You had a wife who stood by you through everything," I whispered, the tears finally starting to burn my eyes. "You had a son who worshipped you, but you chose to build a secret world instead of fixing the one we already had." The silence that followed was the heaviest I had ever felt. It was the silence of a broken promise. I realized then that I couldn't save this marriage alone. It takes 2 people to build a home, but only one lie to tear it all down. I walked past him into our bedroom and pulled out my old leather suitcase from under the bed. As I began packing my clothes, each movement felt like I was reclaiming a piece of myself that I had lost during these months of loneliness. Robert stood at the doorway, watching me pack in silence. He didn't beg me to stay, and he didn't offer a real apology. His lack of action was the loudest answer he could have given me. It confirmed that the man I loved was truly gone. I went to Leo's room and gently woke him up. I told him we were going on a little adventure to Grandma's house. He was still sleepy, but he smiled and hugged his favorite teddy bear, trusting me completely as he always does. As we walked toward the front door, I felt a strange sense of peace. The heavy weight that had been pressing on my chest for months was finally lifting. I wasn't just leaving a house. I was leaving behind the shadow of a woman I no longer wanted to be.
I paused at the threshold and looked back at Robert one last time. I said firmly, "I waited for you to come back to us, Robert, but I finally realized that I was waiting for someone who no longer exists. I deserve to be seen."
I stepped out into the crisp morning air, holding Leo's hand tightly in mine. The sun was rising over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could truly breathe again. Some wounds are too deep to be healed by mere words, and some promises are too broken to be mended. I learned that the bravest thing a person can do is choose their own peace over a life of beautiful lies. My name is Clara. I am starting a new chapter of my life today. I may be starting over, but I am doing it with my head held high. I am no longer a shadow. I am finally beautifully free. Thank you for walking with Clara through the shadows and into the light. If her story reminded you of the power of self-love and courage, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us create more dramatic tales that touch the heart. Remember,
Your peace is worth every brave step. Until next time, stay strong and keep dreaming. Goodbye.